This is how to make葱油拌面, and in Shanghainese dialect it's 葱油拌面. So here I have about 4 bundles of spring onions, which is around 25 to 30 pieces of spring onion. You first cut off the ends that have the roots on them. Then cut the spring onion in half to separate the white and the green parts. Then cut the white half into 4 parts so it's easier and faster to cook it.葱油拌面, or 葱油拌面, roughly translates into spring onion oil noodles. In order to make it, we're simply going to mix some spring onion oil, soy sauce, and some sugar into the noodles. It's a fairly simple dish, but it does take some patience to make the oil. In order to make the oil, we're just going to fry some spring onions in the oil over low heat in order to render all the flavor out. We're separating the green and white parts because they cook for different amounts of time. My family usually makes this oil in large amounts because you can use it in any dish in which you want to enhance the flavoring, which is why I'm cutting so many green onions. But cutting this amount of green onions can make your hands really smell, so if you plan on making this oil in bulk, you might want to wear gloves. And be careful with your hands because the white parts of the green onions can be pretty slippery. Now we're going to cut the green parts. Because the green half is softer, we only have to cut it once in half. After all the spring onions are fried, you can actually eat the spring onions. Traditional 청유부미 uses them as toppings, although you don't have to eat them if you don't want to. Some people don't like to eat the white parts and only eat the green halves, while others don't care and just eat everything. You can adjust things to your own preference and tastes. You can even add minced pork or small shrimps as toppings. If you do decide to make the oil in bulk, you can store it in an airtight container and keep it in your refrigerator. It won't go bad and you can keep it for a pretty long amount of time. I'm also going to add some onions, but it is optional. If you do decide to add some, don't put too much because it is supposed to be a green onion oil, not an onion oil. Here I'm using only about 1/4 of an onion. Put the onions with the white parts because they'll go into the oil at the same time and they will cook for the same amount of time. Pour about 7 to 10 cups of oil into the pan and turn on the fire onto medium-high heat. When the oil is hot enough, put the onions and the white halves of the spring onions into the oil. You'll know when the oil is hot enough when you put your hand over the oil and it feels like the temperature is just below what you think is too hot. Mix it a little bit to loosen and separate the spring onions. Here I have 2 pieces of star anise and 1 small piece of cinnamon. These are also completely optional, but adding these spices can enhance the aroma a little bit more. When the oil starts to bubble more, lower the heat to medium-low heat. You want the oil to sizzle, but not splatter. Remember, we're trying to render out the fragrance in the spring onions, not fry them. Mix the spring onions constantly so they're not burning only on the edges. When the edges turn golden, add the green halves of the spring onion. For those who don't want to eat the white parts of the spring onion, take them out when they turn a little bit more golden brown, and then add the green halves. Mix everything together when the green halves look wilted. This process of rendering out the fragrance from the spring onions will take about 15 to 20 minutes. You don't have to stand and stare at the oil for this amount of time, but make sure you mix it every so often so it doesn't burn on one side. When the spring onions turn brown, take them out and put them in a separate bowl to use for later as toppings. Make sure you don't cook them for too long or else they'll have a bitter, burnt taste and won't be very nice to eat. Take out the star anise and cinnamon separately and throw them away. Pour the oil into a container. This can be used later for other dishes. Leave about 2 to 3 cups of the oil in the pan for the noodles. Here I added some dried shrimp, which is another optional ingredient. I soaked them in some cooking wine for about 5 minutes to bring out the flavor, but make sure you don't put any of the cooking wine into the oil. And turn on the fire onto a medium heat. Now add about 6 spoonfuls of soy sauce. This dish uses 2 types of soy sauce, dark and light. Light soy sauce is what is typically used, but dark soy sauce adds more color to the dish. But it can be more salty, so use it sparingly. Add only 2 spoonfuls of dark soy sauce. Add about 3 spoonfuls of sugar. If you don't have dark soy sauce, just add 2.5 more spoonfuls of light soy sauce. Dark soy sauce is not always necessary because it really just adds some color to the dish. But the traditional葱油 burumi does use it, so add it if you have it. When the sauce starts to boil, add the fried spring onions from earlier. Add as much as you want. Mix the fried spring onions with the sauce, and when the mixture boils, your sauce is complete. Cook the noodles. You can use whatever noodles you want to, but it's better to use thinner ones. Here, I just use some regular dried noodles. I cooked about 3 portions of noodles, but the amount of sauce that we made is enough for about 10 to 12 portions. You can also store the sauce in an airtight container in the refrigerator for a decent amount of time. For each portion of noodles, I added 3 spoonfuls of the sauce, but you can add more or less depending on your own preference. Mix the noodles. Then add some of the fried spring onions on top. And then you're done.